What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Hawk Talk on Melrose. It has been a minute, but we are back for just one episode only. We're not back for good yet. We're not quite that time of year, but we decided to hop back on just because of obviously the recent guy that we got in Kaleb Brown. But just most importantly, like there's been a lot of stuff that's happened this offseason, a lot of good news. And so we just thought we have nothing better to do. Let's get on. Let's talk a little bit. So I got Tyler here. What's going on, man? I'm
What's going on?
getting excited. I'm ready for the season to start, and we still have like 4 months left.
Dude, like these last couple of months, just with everything that's gone on, me and you talk regularly, daily actually, about what's going on in Iowa sports. And obviously a lot of good things have happened. We're not jumping on the pod to say anything negative, which is unlike last year. So definitely excited to kind of dive into all the new players that we got. And yeah, we kind of had that itch to make a pod. We were talking
Yep.
earlier this week. We're like, this would be like the perfect time to kind of do like just a nice like one episode kind of recap of what's happened so
Yeah.
far, and
And
kind of dive into it.
I actually wanted to do one after the spring game, and then just kind of didn't
Yeah.
happen. And then obviously with getting Kaleb Brown, it's kind of like, okay, I think it's time to make one up. And so this will probably be our last episode, first and last episode of the off season. I know it's just funny how every year we always act like we're gonna
Yeah,
do an off season of like still
it's
doing
tough
episodes. It is. It's really tough. I mean, we're not.
scheduling and just
Yeah, we're not a full time
yeah,
podcast. I mean, those
right.
people out there that have a bunch of sponsorships that can do it, like hats off to them. They get guests. Like this is just for fun. So
Right.
it's really hard to do stuff in the off season. So kind of our plan is, as of right now, we'll do this one, and then we'll probably wait until the end of July is kind of when that's what we did last year, and do like one episode a week leading up to like game week.
Yep.
Because by the end of July, we're starting to get in full swing of fall camp, and there's a lot of storylines. We'll do one episode a week, and then obviously when the season starts, we'll get back to twice a week. We'll do one Sunday post game coverage reaction, and then we'll do one later in the week on
For the
prediction. Yep,
preview the next game.
So
Yeah.
yep, and it's just funny because it's like it's May 5th, or no, wait, it's May 6th now. And it seems like it's so far away, but man, you get to like Memorial Day, you get to 4th of July, and next thing you know, it is the end of July. And I sit here right now, and it's gonna feel like this, and we'll be back sitting right here again talking, and we'll be, instead of being 4 months out, we'll be only 4 weeks or 5 weeks out. So yeah, it's gonna be here before you know it, and I'm getting excited.
Yeah, dude, that's kind of the theme of kind of this football in general. I feel like when it ends, you're just kind of like, oh man, it's going to take
Yeah.
forever. But then things happen, life happens, you move, the summer starts rolling around and you're like, holy crap, we're back.
Yep.
So I think this is a perfect kind of time to like you said, to kind of talk about what's gone on, all the positives, and kind of just summarize and recap what, like I said, what's gone on
Everything
so
that's
far,
happened.
and what's going to lead into this next season. So
Yep. So yeah, let's take a step back a little bit. Let's get right into it. Mainly today, we're just going to talk about the transfers that we got, and maybe go through the depth chart, what we kind of think the depth chart will be. We could sit here and go through the schedule, but like that is something that we can do leading up to the season when we're a little bit closer out. There was one thing, like I remember last year remember when we like ranked the difficulty of the schedule 12-1. Like I definitely want to do that this year. We'll do that obviously like when we get closer. I know last year we did the top 10 players that we thought, so we'll do that again. So that'll all be like later on. In August.
Some similar segments that we did last year that we want to continue this year. We think it was good. It was good topics for discussion, and like you said, obviously with new players and everything like that, that'll be good to talk about.
Yep. So yeah, let's start with the first pickup that we got, Cade McNamara. I think our last episode that we did, which was like December 15th. Obviously, at that point, we knew Cade was coming, but just kind of to rehash on that, it is amazing how quick that was when he did decide to commit. I still remember it was Thanksgiving Day. I remember I texted you where I was hearing rumblings of like a potential Cade McNamara to Iowa. And I still remember, I mean, I was the same way, but I remember your response was just like, we'll see it.
I was just basically like, good one.
Yeah. Like,
I was not confident after everything that just happened. I was not confident.
And that was the day before the Nebraska game. So that was like, we were still like in the season.
We're in the seat. Yep.
And the offense is terrible. It's like, do you really think he's going to come to Iowa?
It was hard to have a positive thought at that moment.
Yeah.
About something that really could change, the offense, the program type of thing. So,
I mean, he's a difference. He's honestly a difference maker. He really is. Yeah. And what I loved about his commitment, it was so quick, like some of these guys, they're taking visits to a bunch of different schools. It's like a waiting game. For him, it was just like out of nowhere. We were playing, I still remember it was like December 2nd or something. We were playing Xbox and I was like, holy shit, Tyler, Cade McNamara's coming to Iowa.
I do remember that.
Yeah. I was like, what the hell? Like it was so quick. But what Cade brings to the table for me, I'm not going to say he's, I think a lot of people think like Iowa fans think like he's like the second coming to Christ and he's like the best quarterback in the transfer portal and he's, a Heisman caliber guy. No, I don't think that at all. But what he does bring to the table is number one, he's much better than what we have had or what we had the last 3 years. That's not even a question, but he brings that starting experience, a guy that went 12-0 in 2021, made it to the Big Ten championship game, won that game. Yes, made it to the playoffs and got their asses kicked, but that Georgia team, is every defender on that team in the NFL now? Like, I'm pretty sure they are. That team was unreal.
Eagles, yeah, literally on the Eagles right now, pretty much, right? Like, when you talk about all-time defenses, down the road, right now it's, you don't talk about it as much, but down the road, you'll be like, yeah, that's one of the best defenses college football's probably seen.
Yeah. So,
in fact, Iowa not that far behind them, but that's just
that year,
crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And how good that team was with individual players. Like,
yeah. So Michigan gets smoked that game. I mean, Georgia. I mean, they were on like that Georgia team was like a different galaxy compared to any other team. I mean, they even I mean, they beat Alabama that year by pretty easily, actually. So I'm not going to really sit there and be like, that. But so he brings starting experience, a guy that is going to at least make the easy plays, something that Spencer Petras literally couldn't do. I mean, we were talking about this like 2 weeks ago when we were just going over like, the difference between him and Spencer. I mean, Spencer, go back and watch some highlights. The dude couldn't even make like the easy throws. Couldn't even make that 5-yard out sometimes. He just wasn't a good quarterback. And so with Cade, you're at least, well, you hope anyway, but it's like at least you're bringing in a guy that can make some of those easy throws, because it is truly unbelievable how bad Spencer was the last couple of years.
The thing, I mean, and this is just going to play off of what you said, it's consistency at the position. You know, when you look at a quarterback, Iowa's never going to be that team to go get one of the top ranked quarterbacks coming out of high school. It's just not going to happen, right? Or even like transfer wise. But for Cade to, like, when I look at Cade and what I remember with him at Michigan and just seeing like, obviously just highlights of him, consistency is one of the biggest things that I noticed with him. And, if that's what he's going to bring to Iowa, that is going to be a humongous upgrade. You just mentioned it. I was watching kind of the NFL draft, obviously a ton of the coverage, and I was watching some analysts and they're like, to be a quarterback in the NFL, and I'm not saying, I'm not, this isn't specifically about Cade, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of the NFL, but I'm just saying, like, he was just like the easy throws on a scale of 1 to 10, it should be like a 1 or a 2. You got to be able to hit those every single time to be a good quarterback. Like you just mentioned, Spencer had the hardest time doing that specifically. And if you can't do that, then you can't,
you're not
can't go down the field. You can't work, you're not going to be built to be an explosive offense. Not saying that Iowa is going to have an explosive offense. I'm just saying, like, you have to be able to do the routine stuff. And I think Cade's going to be able to do that.
In 3 years with Spencer Petras, the Spencer Petras era, the last 3 years, He never completed 60%, over 60% of his passes. Actually, the best was 2021 at 57.3 was his best year for that. Last year was 55.9%. That's just, it's not going to cut it. You know, and this is kind of a sidetrack. I know we're talking about the transfers, but I just want to talk real quick about, you know, I don't like Brian at all. So don't people thinking that I'm like a Brian fan. I'm not, but I mean, I don't think any offensive coordinator could do a good job with how bad Spencer was. I mean, he seems like a good guy off the field. Spencer Petras does, but he just was not a good quarterback. He was not good at all. He was terrible. He probably was the worst quarterback in the country last year, D1 level. It was in little bit had to do with how bad the offensive line was. I mean, I do feel like if he had time and protection, he would be a little bit better, but he still just was not a good quarterback. And it's hard to do anything good when you have someone like that controlling and managing your offense. And when you're trying to put up points and you're trying to score, it's kind of hard to do that when you have a really bad quarterback.
Well, the fact that and I don't, yeah, like you said, this shouldn't be this isn't about just shitting on Spencer Petras right now, but it's just when you're comparing what you have now to what we had last year. I mean, not only was he not a very good quarterback, he had no confidence. And if you have no confidence, like how do you go out there and just like believe in yourself, believe that you're going to win this game, believe that you're like, you could see it. You could just see it. You felt like his confidence was shot. He had, I don't know. It's hard to believe in something when I believe he didn't even really believe in himself. And maybe, like you said, maybe he didn't believe he got the fairest of shakes. Offensive line isn't great. Play calling isn't great. But like you said, nothing on every team there's something that's not going to be perfect. You're not going to have the perfect offensive line. You're not going to have you're not Georgia or Alabama. You're not getting every 5-star recruit, right? So you got to be able to work with what you got. And I know last year we didn't have a lot on offense, but when you just see some of the easy stuff that is so routine that you can't complete, well, then I don't believe in you as a quarterback. So, and with Cade, I just feel the complete opposite. First of all, like I said, consistency, and then just leadership. I think he'll have a ton of confidence coming in. I mean, clearly he does. He said on Twitter, he said in the media, it's like, if you really think our offense is going to be bad, like this offense is, basically just like sticking it to the media. Like, I can't wait to prove you guys wrong. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, he brings like
I didn't get that sense with Spencer at all last year.
Yeah, he brings like a level of swagger that we just haven't had at the quarterback position since CJ Beathard. I like Nate Stanley. He wasn't a bad quarterback for us, but like even him, like he didn't bring that level of just the swagger. And with Cade, like you go back.
There's a sense of cockiness that like I don't feel like is over the line or anything. It's just like I think he just really believes in himself.
Yep, he does,
which is not a bad thing.
And you go back and you watch his highlights of 2021 at Michigan and some of the games, like specifically like when he played at Michigan State, obviously it's a, tough road environment. I mean, they put up, I know they lost, but they put up like 30 some, that was like a shootout game, like 30 some points. And some of the throws that he made that game just in stride. And that's just the type of quarterback that like I'm saying here, just like, oh my gosh, like if he can be like that in Iowa with our defense, we're not going to ask him to do like that much. Like that is what we need. And yeah, I think obviously I'm optimistic, but I do think our offense now with him is going to be a lot better. Now we're just wait and see. But I think there's a level of, prove everybody wrong. And I think Ferentz, Kirk specifically, just looking at some of the transfers we got, I mean, he seems like he's like, it's do or die. We got to do it now. And so I'm hoping that, we see some changes, and we'll talk more about the offense, obviously, when we get closer to the season and stuff like that. But yeah, I just think with Cade, I mean, I'm going to give we'll do grades. I'm giving it an A+, not because I think he's the best quarterback ever, like what I was saying before, but just simply the fact that this is someone that we needed. Can you imagine like how would you feel right now, Tyler, if we didn't get Cade and we were going with like Joey Labus into the season? Like that's just how.
What did we say last year? Our question was, can we get anybody? Like, who wants to come to this offense? Those are the type of questions that we're having.
Yeah,
100% agree with you. A plus.
yeah, because it's just like if we wouldn't have gotten
Position
Cade,
of need.
who would we have gotten at quarterback? Like,
I don't know. And it's what I love about it too. I think it's a really good fit. Similar style of offense, at Michigan, run first kind of offense. Never asked him to do, too much. But just is going to be able to provide some. He's going to be able to like steer the ship, if you will. Like he's just going to be able to like move this offense along, and I love that.
And like
A plus, a position of need clearly. Like I said, we're asking those questions last year. We're like, this could be. You think last year was bad? This could be really bad come next year if we don't get if Kirk doesn't accept the transfer portal as as something that needs to happen in 2023 of college football. This is a huge part of football now, and credit to them. I mean, you got one of the better transfer quarterbacks that were out there, and someone that, like you said, is been there, done that, proven himself really, I think, so far, and A plus.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, if we would have gotten Cade, if we wouldn't have gotten Cade, we probably would have found some sort of transfer at quarterback. But once again, like, would that person, if whoever it was, would they have the experience like Cade has? I mean, you talk about a guy that has made it to the Big Ten championship game, has made it to the playoffs. Like, talk about just experience alone. I'm not saying Cade's the best quarterback in the transfer portal, but experience alone, he might be. And I know Kirk said when he was on the Big Ten Network, it's like when he was in the NFL, it's like getting that free agent that is just a big time player, and it just makes you feel good. It makes you feel like, oh my gosh, like we got it now. And this is the first time that this has ever happened for Iowa. I mean, for a lot of teams, because the transfer portal is kind of a new thing, but it's awesome knowing going into next year that we finally have a quarterback that I feel confident about because of that experience that he has had. So yes, A plus. All right, let's go to the next transfer that we got, which was Deacon Hill. He's quarterback too. He's a former 4-star, played 2 years at Wisconsin, essentially left when Paul Chryst left. He was actually committed then to Fordham, but then he decided we kind of went to him when Carson May transferred, and he decided to come to us. He's a big body quarterback with a strong arm. The thing that I thought was most surprising is he got on campus in January, and he's already the backup to Cade. He's ahead of Joey Labus, according to Ferentz. So that asked me 2 questions. How bad was the quarterback room last year if this guy's already ahead of Joey Labus? And then the second question is, well, I guess I already asked you this like 5 minutes ago. What, if we didn't get any quarterbacks in the transfer portal, literally Joey Labus would have been our starting quarterback next year. And the fact that this guy, who I've never even heard of, comes in and is essentially the backup now to Cade. It's kind of like funny.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I didn't really know who this was until we kind of were like, let's do an episode and let's talk about the transfers. And I kind of looked him up a little bit. And like you said, number one, and that's the question that we're all going to want to know is how bad was our quarterback room last year? It had to have been one of the worst in the country.
I think it might have been the worst because
not only that, but, and again, I'm not trying to throw shots at anyone, but me and you have talked about it. It's like Alex Padilla transfers out and he goes to SMU, and I don't know if this is still the case, but we were talking, he's like the 3rd string quarterback at SMU.
Yeah, he is.
It's like you go from the 2nd string to the 3rd string at a lesser program. And so what are we talking about? So again, number 2, I would give it like a B plus. You can never have enough quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
And injuries happen, things happen in the season. We're as Iowa fans, we know when injuries happen with, Spencer and everything like that. And it's like to have someone in there that can manage a game and keep you afloat is important. And I think having a backup quarterback is one of the most underrated things that you can have. So I give it like a B plus. Obviously not, probably the most highly coveted quarterback out there, but to have a solid backup,
I will always take it. Yeah. Well, especially because Cade, is coming off he had surgery last year and he wasn't 100% in spring. He did practice, but they said he's going to be 100% coming in the summer. But you just, with that, you always want a backup just in case, knock on wood, good to go. And we see no injuries this year, but yeah, you want to at least have a backup that is decent just in case that does happen. Right. And so, yeah, I was going to give it like a B plus B ish type, pickup. If it wouldn't have happened, it's not the end of the world, but I'm glad we did get him. So, all right, next one is the one that we just got 2 days ago or 3 days ago, Kaleb Brown, a former 4-star. Iowa actually recruited him out of high school, and it was going good up until he started getting, interest from Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, and essentially went off to Ohio State. If he would have went to Iowa, he would have been the highest rated recruit ever for wide receivers, which is like crazy to think. And he has 4 years of eligibility remaining, which I thought he only had like 3, but he has 4 years left, which is like a long time. He's a dynamic receiver. He can line up anywhere on the field. He has a speed. He's, a threat downfield. It's just one of the bigger pickups, and I'm just so glad we finally got him.
A plus. Can I go higher than an A plus? I mean, him and Cade, honestly. Two of the biggest positional needs on offense, quarterback and a wide receiver for Iowa right now, right? So you get a guy, like you said, would have been the highest rated wide receiver to come to Iowa ever. And I know you'll talk a little bit about kind of like, because again, that's another like shocker, right? That he would come and choose Iowa, especially kind of just how it all happened and things like that recently. But no, I mean, like you said, not only is he a dynamic receiver, vertical threat, which I feel like we haven't had in forever. Yeah. And number 2, he's a good return guy too. I feel like we were kind of lacking that last year, and I'm not saying that he's going to be the returner. I don't know, but I know like he definitely can do that. So he just provides so much, really like flexibility on offense. You can kind of line him up wherever you want, and I think he's just going to make plays. His highlights are insane. He's a freak athlete and something that Iowa has been lacking for a long time.
I think obviously I was getting a little panicky there for a little bit because it's like, God, are we going to get another receiver? And it's a position of need. You look at our wide receiver room when healthy, and I'm talking if we didn't get Kaleb. When healthy, it's not a bad position group, but we're not going to be 100% healthy. You always know that there's going to be a guy or two out every single game. And so at that point, it's like, oh my gosh, like we need some guys. And so getting Kaleb might be your best receiver now. I mean, just like that. I mean, and it's just, it was such a big pickup. I did feel, I mean, when we got Cade, it was like amazing, but I almost kind of like felt more like with getting him, like, oh my gosh, just because of how bad our offense was last couple of years. And it's like, how would any wide receiver want to come to Iowa? And we actually got a guy that is capable of being a stud for us. Makes you feel really good.
Yeah, it really, like, it's so weird because it's like, well, you need a great quarterback to be able to get the ball to the receivers, but then if you're Cade, you're like, okay, I need some guys to throw to as well. So it's like, it's just the perfect complement of, really good quarterback, really good wide receiver transfers. Couldn't be happier. Like you said, so weird. Like I didn't even really know of him, and all of a sudden he's like taking a visit to Iowa, posting on his Instagram story. He's on the field, or, right next to the field, and he's in Iowa City. And, then it's going to be, well, don't get your hopes up, kind of a slow process, likes to keep it close to the vest. And then all of a sudden he's just like committed. And like you said, the pure joy and excitement, I think, for Iowa fans, was deserved, because we've been missing this for a while. So.
Yeah, it was just such a quick, it was a quick thing. It was, I thought for sure when I was reading he was going to go off to, what was it, Oklahoma and Texas A&M, and I'm like, ooh, hopefully, it's hard to compete against them, especially, in some position groups for Iowa. It's not, because there are some position groups where, we bring guys to the NFL. We have a history of, a good sales pitch, but at wide receiver, it's like we have nothing to offer, like really to show. So when there was talks of him potentially going to those two schools to visit, I started getting a little worried, like, maybe it's too good to be true. And next thing you know, he comes, and yeah, it's big time. And if we don't get him, like let's just say hypothetically, let's say we didn't get Kaleb. Yeah, I mean like next year we would have probably done a lot of 12, 22 personnel, 2 tight ends. And that's probably what we're gonna do a lot this year too. But like now with Kaleb, you have the flexibility of being able to have, 3 wide receivers out there because you have some guys that you can trust that are capable of being able to go downfield. And not only that, but it's going to help our running game too. When you actually have guys on the outside that are capable of making plays, it's going to help Kaleb Johnson and it's going to help LaShawn Williams. It's going to help, those guys too. So it's big time. It was a big time pickup. Did you say your grade yet for that?
Yeah, A+.
A+. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say A+ too. Now,
so go ahead.
Well, I was just say one thing. Like, I will say, like, I get it. He only had 1 catch at Ohio State, and we kind of prove it. Kind of have to see it to prove it, and I get that. But I just think just the raw talent of the guy is something that we have not had, and yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, so you brought up the point. There's Iowa State fans or whoever fans, maybe even Ohio State fans, it's like, well, this guy's not that good. Like, why are you guys so happy about it? You're talking about a guy that didn't get on the field because he's behind Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Dude,
yeah,
like, come on. He's a really good. If you're a wide receiver and you were at the University or at Ohio State University, you're a good receiver. I'm sorry.
Yep, exactly.
And then number 2, really quick, you brought up the point. It's like we don't have any credibility in terms of like, well, why would a wide receiver want to come to Iowa? That's another reason why getting Cade is so important. And you've mentioned it. Players recruit players, and you can't tell me he didn't have something to do with, Kaleb's decision to come. So, obviously, you get that quarterback. It's not only huge because you have finally a quarterback, but like I said, players recruit other players, and you never know what you're going to get. And obviously, we know now that Kaleb's here, so it's huge.
I don't think he comes if Cade isn't here, or
absolutely
if
not.
Joey Labus is a starting quarterback, or if Spencer Petras.
Look who came last year. Nobody. Like, really?
Well, we actually had 2 guys leave, and then we got
That's
nobody.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so, no, absolutely not. Like, you probably downgrade from Spencer. I don't know. I don't know if Joey's better, like how Joey is. I don't really know. I
would say if he was starting next year, he'd probably be better than Spencer because I truly think Spencer is one of the worst quarterbacks to ever go through Iowa and in the country. Like, I just think that you can't get worse than what he is.
Yeah.
So I would say Joey's probably a little bit better than him, but probably not much more, especially if you have a guy that
not enough
just came
to go
to the program
two
months ago and is already ahead of you. What does that tell you? All right, next receiver, Seth Anderson. This was the first receiver that we got back in January. I was pretty excited about. He chose us over, Georgia Tech, Kansas, Appalachian State, and I know it's not, oh my gosh, big schools, but that's Iowa. I mean, obviously with Kaleb Brown is different, but we're not going to get these big time receivers. We're going to get guys that are kind of unproven, right? And you kind of hope for the best. This guy has 3 years of eligibility remaining. He had a great freshman campaign at Charleston Southern, 42 catches, 612 yards, about 14.6 yards per catch, had 7 touchdowns. He was a Big South Offensive Player of the Year, and he was a finalist for the Jerry Rice Freshman of the Year in the FCS level. So that's pretty good. Had an injury this spring, so we haven't really had a chance to kind of see what he is capable of. But he's supposed to be healthy going into the summer, into fall camp. I'm excited for him. I think he's going to do good for us. I think he's a type of guy that no one really talks about just because he was out during the spring ball, but I'm really excited for him. I was going to give this like an A- because once again, we need any receiver help in the world. And if he did good, I get it, Charleston Southern, but he had a great freshman campaign. You can't tell me that he can't do somewhat decent at Iowa. I mean, I would say he probably will.
Yep, I was going to go B+. Again, position in need, clearly. At the time when we got him, it was probably like an A because I'm like, I don't know who we're going to get. And once you step back from it, now you just got Kaleb. I would go B plus right there with A minus, B plus. Again, never have too many wide receivers at Iowa. And like you said, very productive on that level. And like, again, you haven't heard of him. We haven't seen him. He's been injured. So, it'll be interesting once he gets healthy, hopefully, and we start to get more familiar with Seth Anderson. It'll, that could change, but, having a plethora of wide receivers is a good thing. So yeah, B plus.
And then the last kind of not really skill position, but for offense, for weapons, is Eric All. We got him shortly after Cade decided to come here. He was went in the transfer portal and almost kind of felt like he was going to be a Hawk. And sure enough, he decided to follow Cade's footsteps and came to Iowa. He broke out in the 2021 season with Cade. He was kind of Cade's go-to target, which is big time for us because, with Cade coming here, all these new receivers, at least he has one guy that he has chemistry with where, in certain situations, I mean, every quarterback always has that go-to guy, and knowing that it's probably going to be Eric All just because they have that chemistry is pretty big time. He had 38 receptions, 437 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 2021. Last year, he played in 3 games, and then he got hurt, I don't know if he got hurt out on the field, but he ended up just calling it quits for last year. He ended up getting back surgery, and now he's good to go. And they were talking, if he didn't have to get back surgery, he would probably be off to the NFL. And that kind of set him back, and now he's at Iowa. He's only going to be here for 1 year. I'm sure he's going to go to the NFL after this year because I'm sure he's going to put up insane stats. I think he's going to have a better season, or he's going to have better stats than Luke Lachey. And I think Luke Lachey is going to be a stud for us, but I just think that chemistry with Cade's going to look to him a lot. And I just think Eric All is going to be an absolute stud for us. And before I hear your thoughts on this, I just go back to 2018. Our offense that year, and Nate Stanley was quarterback, but when we had TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant, 2 really, really good tight ends, we actually had a pretty good offense. I mean, we were putting up a decent amount of points. I actually have it written down somewhere. I forgot, God, where do I have it written down? But there was like 3 or 4 games that year where we put up close to 40 points, which is like unheard of for Iowa. And so you get some playmakers, especially at tight end, things can happen. So I'm excited for him. I'm going to give this I'm going to say probably another A minus ish, just because if we wouldn't have got him, it's not the end of the world. I mean, we do have Luke Lachey, Addison Ostrenga. We're always known for our tight ends, but it is a big time pickup for us just because of that chemistry and because he has that NFL talent. He is going to go off the NFL. So,
yeah, I mean, dude, anytime you have, familiarity with, your quarterback, wide receiver, whatever, let alone 2 guys that played on the same team just a couple of years ago. I mean, literally having that come to Iowa in an offense where we already like to throw the ball to tight ends, he's going to have a very productive year. I agree. He, like you said, he's an NFL tight end type of talent. And, he's kind of in that prove it year where, like you said, it's like he just came off an injury. He's going to want to prove that, he's ready, or he's going to take the next step. And I think he'll be very successful in this offense, and you just mentioned it, the trust that he has, that Cade has in him. I mean, I'm sure he'll get the ball plenty. So not based off of a ton of need per se, but I would go A just because, again, like you said, having that dynamic duo at tight end in Iowa's offense, it's proven that it works. And just having that, again, security blanket for Cade is going to be huge. And I agree, Lachey's a stud, but don't be surprised if Eric All has a better season just because there's that familiarity there.
Yep, exactly. And I would say, well, during the spring game, you saw what Eric All is capable of. He had a very good day, and just all through spring practice, I've just heard that he was very good for Iowa. He made a lot of great catches, and there's going to be plays where we're going to spread out Luke Lachey to the outside just because he used to play wide receiver in high school. He has the frame, just a tall guy, and then you'll have Eric inside. I think it's with
kind of like what Sam did a little bit last year.
Yep, but the only difference is we actually now have a quarterback that can throw them the ball. So I'm looking forward to it. Because last year, I mean,
too.
because here's the thing.
Well, last year we had to do that because we didn't have a wide receiver.
But we also had a dynamic duo of tight ends, but it seemed like we didn't utilize them. You know, Sam Laporta, Luke
that's
Lachey.
The thing. It's like you have a Sam Laporta who's clearly one of the better tight ends that went second round in the draft, and we just don't find I'm not saying we don't find a way. We don't have a quarterback that can get him the ball. So
yeah.
I agree.
I mean, he definitely had a pretty good season last year, but I think it could have been a lot better. And I think Luke Lachey could have had a lot better season too. I mean, if we
had a competent offense, yeah. I mean, seriously, he actually had a pretty productive season, even though our offense was horrible. Yep. So like, that's actually more impressive. I feel like.
Yeah. All right, and then
was like the number one person everyone was defending against.
Yeah, no kidding. Point. So you gave that an A. Yeah. So
I mean, again,
like is what I would give him.
Again, not based off of need, because I think I was always good at tight end, but it's also like you can't not have enough tight ends at Iowa. So
exactly.
Again, just with the quarterback that we have, that familiarity, yeah, I go A. You could probably go A on every offensive player, to be honest, with how bad we were. That's just this.
Anything's better than what we had.
But it's like, yeah.
So, no, I definitely agree. So offensive line now, because the offensive line, I mean, once again, going back to what I said earlier in the episode, Spencer Petras was really bad, but you can't put all the blame on him because the offensive line was absolutely atrocious last year. It was so bad. So what we did in the offseason is, well, number one, we are bringing back pretty much everybody, which isn't, a good or bad thing because these are the same guys that were really bad last year, but your hope is that they, get better in the offseason. Yeah. They get bigger. They get better. I mean, usually that's what happens when you have experience. Each year you get a little bit better, and that's your hope. But we also went out and we got two guys. We got Dejon Parker. He's a plug and play type of player at right tackle. We essentially went after him when Proctor flipped to Alabama. Played D2, and I get it. It's D2, but, I've always said, like, guys that play FCS, D2, there's guys that play in those things that are 100% capable of playing D1 football. He was committed to Virginia. He flipped to us. He was another guy that was pretty much out most of spring, but he's supposed to be back in June for summer workouts. He's slated to start at right tackle. He looks the part. He's 6'5". He's 300 pounds. He's a big guy. And once again, like, as long as he stays healthy, he's probably going to be the starting right tackle. And if you don't recall, the right tackle position was the worst last year. It was so bad. And I'm pretty sure Connor Colby was the starting right tackle. He's not made for right tackle. He is more of a guard. He's probably going to start at guard for us. And I think he's a great guard. He's not a good tackle. And he was playing right tackle for us last year. And so I'm excited for this guy. I'm going to give this like a B+. I thought it was a pretty big pickup. We need all the help in the world at our offensive line. And we need depth at that position, at offensive line too, because there's always going to be injuries. And so this was a big time pickup for us.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, at the time, it was a huge get for Iowa, considering, again, need. You just mentioned it. Very, very bad last year on the offensive line, specifically at right tackle. And, like you said, Connor, I think is going to kick inside to guard, and where he's probably, like you said, best suited. But he's a huge guy. And when you think of tackles, I mean, I'm not trying to get too into the position, but like you want big tackles that are athletic enough to be able to hold their own, and I think he does that. And I just remember getting him at the time. We were like, holy shit, this is going to be huge, because he's probably a day one starter. Yep. And it sounds like he's going to be. So yeah, huge get. I would also probably go B+, A-. Just, I mean, yeah, just like what you said. So.
Yep. And then the other offensive lineman we got was Rusty Fett. He was a 4-year starter at Miami of Ohio. He was recruited out of high school by George Barnett, who is the offensive line coach for Iowa. So it almost kind of felt like when he entered the portal that he was going to come to Iowa. And sure enough, he did. He was a second-team All-MAC last year, which, MAC conference, I have a lot of respect for the MAC. I mean, it's a great group of 5 conference. There's a lot of decent players that play in that conference every single year. There's always that, 1 or 2 teams that are actually not bad. Like I go back to like 2 years ago. Remember Kent State? Like, they were not a bad team. Yeah. So I have a lot of respect for the MAC. And so this guy, 4-year starter at Miami of Ohio, I think he will probably be a day one starter as well at guard for us. He doesn't arrive on campus until June, but I thought this was another really good pickup, and I was going to give it like a B+ because even if he doesn't start, just that added depth and a guy that has experience. So I will take it. I'm going to give it like a B+.
Yep. Same here. B+. Again, position in need. Can never have too many offensive linemen. And he just sounds like an offensive lineman, Rusty Feth. So I love it.
Yep. He just looks like that. He has that.
He just looks, I mean, he
looks the part.
funny. Yeah.
And then probably the most underrated pickup that we got, just like we don't really talk about him, just because offensively we were in such desperate need for players, and defensively we kind of are, but kind of not. So not many people talk about him, but Nick Jackson, middle linebacker. We needed a replacement for Jack Campbell. We're never going to replace Jack Campbell in terms of what he did at Iowa. He was the best linebacker in my eyes to go through Iowa. It's like trying to replace Tyler Linderbaum 2 years ago at center. It's just, you're never going to replace him. But can you at least get close enough? And like last year, Logan Jones, not quite, not very close. And I think Logan Jones will get better. But here at middle linebacker, we go and get Nick Jackson, which I think he is going to live up to at least get decently close to what we had with Jack Campbell. Doesn't arrive on campus until June, but you look at his stats at Virginia, all ACC player, finished with 352 tackles, 20 tackles for loss, 10.5 sacks. He's an excellent tackler. He's a proven leader. Like, the guy is a stud. He started for the last 3 years. This was a huge get. Not only that, but this guy was getting recruited by Oklahoma and LSU. It was down to us, LSU, and Oklahoma. And I did not think he was going to choose us because it's hard to compete against those two SEC schools. Well, Oklahoma's going to be an SEC school. And he decided to come to Iowa.
What? See, that's where Iowa has some credibility on defense.
On defense, yep.
So I 100% agree. Huge get.
I'm going to say like A+ for this one.
If you're going to talk about A+ for like Cade, kind of like obviously quarterback, he's kind of like another quarterback of the defense type of player. Like he's a leader, like you said, just very underrated. There's a lot of like underrated qualities about him that I think are going to be huge for this team. And like you said, he's a very productive player. And at Virginia, of all places, like probably not that good of a football team. So I can't imagine what he's going to be like in Phil Parker's defense. Real quick, and I know we just talked about the offensive lineman. Isn't this where it's like, what if we had Caden Proctor though? I know that's such like God, dude.
Because talk about a guy that's probably a day one starter as well, even as a freshman. It's him.
I know. It's just like sometimes I think about that. It's like, God, if we just had him too. But obviously we don't. We're moving on. But no, I was just thinking about that when you brought his name up.
Yeah, that was a big time. Just like really kind of slapped your face because he was obviously committed for like 6 months and then just right at the last minute just decided to go. So yeah, in it all, not one transfer that I'm sitting here saying like, not very good. I mean, I think every single transfer that we got is a huge get. And I think are all probably besides Deacon Hill will all be productive. I mean, or should be productive this year and will bring a lot to the table. These 8 guys that we got have dramatically changed on paper anyway, this team and the capability. Yeah. And in fact, how good or bad we, are next year. But I think these guys are going to, because here's the thing, like we brought back a decent amount of guys, but getting these guys as well on paper, we should be very good. I mean, and we're going to go through the depth chart here pretty soon, but you go from top to bottom. There's still obviously some holes that we'll talk about, but for the most part on paper, it's a pretty good damn roster.
And when you look at it, Collin, 7 out of the 8 guys are offensive guys. And I think that just speaks a lot to, obviously the coaching staff realizing like, listen, we have to get better. And it's one thing to like hear it. It's another thing to see it. Right.
Yep.
And this is proof in the pudding that, well, they've gotten offensive players to come to Iowa that are, I think, going to be very productive. So have a chance to be at least. And so that's really, really good to see and very exciting, obviously.
I got to give it to Kirk. 2 years ago or last year, going into last year, he was probably pretty stubborn about the transfer portal, but I think after this last year, he knew like do or die. You got to adapt or not. And he decided, let's go all in. If there's a year to go to the Big Ten championship game, it is this year, the last year for the divisions. You got a lot of new coaches in the Big Ten West at Wisconsin, at Nebraska, at Purdue.
Yeah.
I like all those hires, but that first year, you just never know. It usually takes a year or two to really get things up and running, full swinging. So, like, this is the year to do it. And so I give all the credit to Ferentz to what he has done to get some of these guys to come in. It's pretty big. And are we done yet in the transfer portal? I don't think so. I think we're still we are 100% pursuing another secondary player at corner. And then, are we done at wide receiver? Is there a chance we might go after another guy just to have even more depth at that position? You never know. I mean, it could happen. I do think we will land another corner. We're slated to host Antonio Carter next week. He's a guy from Rhode Island. The problem with him, though, is we're battling up against Wisconsin, Texas A&M, Kentucky, and Ole Miss. So going to be tough. It was sounding like he was pretty much all in on Wisconsin, but then he kind of decided, like, I'm going to take some more visits, and now he's coming to Iowa next week, which is huge because just like Kaleb Brown, if he can come.
You just got to get him on campus, man.
Get him on campus, connect with the teammates, connect with Phil Parker. You never know. And I think Iowa's NIL it's not the greatest, but it's not bad either. I think we've done a pretty good job with NIL. So is there some money that we can give him to come? And the problem, though, with him,
I know.
Is
what are you going to say? Is he going to start?
He's probably not going to start as of right now with Cooper and Jamari Harris. And I don't know. I mean, maybe he's a guy that wants to start, not wait a year. But I think if we don't get him, we're definitely going to go after another corner. And like, I do think we will land at least someone. But the problem the reason why I want him so bad is because he is a stud. I mean, his last year, he had 60 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss at corner, 1 sack, 1 interception, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 11 pass deflections. I mean, the guy had a really good campaign. So he's the type of guy that would fill that much needed, like, third guy just in case someone gets hurt, or hell, sometimes you do have 3 corners out there at one time, especially if you're going up against an offense that is, runs a lot of spread out, air raid type offenses, which you don't really see in the Big Ten, but Wisconsin's actually switching that with Luke Fickell. So like there will probably be times where he would be out there along with Cooper and Jamari. But there's always going to be injuries. And so having him would be huge.
Look at last year. Corner became a very big need for Iowa late in the season, right? So again, just another position specifically for Iowa that I feel like you just can't have enough of.
Exactly.
You can say that about every position, but I'm just saying, like, you can never have enough good corners, right? And guys that, like you said, can step up and when their number's called, and because you never know, like, or if a guy's just playing bad in the game, getting torched, it's like, okay, we bring in the next guy, and you have that confidence that he can step in and play. Like you said, maybe if he doesn't have the chance to start, I don't know. But just the fact that he's like opening up his kind of recruitment and like taking a visit, I think is obviously
huge.
A good first step. So like you said, get him on campus. I feel like that was kind of like what happened with Kaleb. Got him on campus, like you said, connected with the teammates and coaches, and you never know. So
yeah, it'd be a big time pickup. He's coming, like I said, on Wednesday. I hope it goes well. He's the type of player that seems like, even after, it's going to take a while. Like, he's probably going to go visit some other schools. I think this week he's at Texas. This weekend he's at Texas A&M, I'm pretty sure, is what I read. So, it'd be a big time pickup for us, and just be like another guy. Like, wow, we did really good in the transfer portal. I would say if you combine all the players, I would say you're close, and it's not me just being biased and stuff like that. Like, I really think it was like almost like an A+ transfer portal for Iowa, because we pretty much filled every position a need. Once again, besides, I would still want another corner, maybe another wide receiver, just to be like, because like, let's face it, if we got one more wide receiver, I would have no pain. Like, I'm starting to get to that point with Kaleb now, like getting him, like I'm not as worried But if we got one more, I would definitely not be worried at all about the wide receiver unit. But I would say close to an A+, just because of the players that we got and the position of needs kind of were filled, starting with obviously the most important position, that's at quarterback.
Yeah, and like I just mentioned, 7 out of the 8 transfers so far are offensive, which is what we needed. Could you imagine if it's like the other way around? It's like, well, wait, aren't we pretty set on deep,
defense?
And so it's just like it to recognize that this is what we had to do, and like you said, the actual positions that we got, the players that we got, 100%, man. You have to say it's an A+.
Yeah. So real quick before we end, I'm just gonna go through the depth chart real quick of what I kind of see it being. So I think obviously quarterback Cade McNamara, followed by Deacon, and then Joey Labus. At running back, which we hadn't talked about the running backs today because we got no running back transfers because we don't really need any. But Kaleb Johnson, which he might be one of the better running backs in the Big Ten. You got to give it to Blake Corum, but he could be right behind or couple players behind him and maybe some other guys. He's a stud. LaShawn Williams, Jazwan Patterson, and then the freshman that we got, Terrell Washington Jr. I love this group. I think it's
this. Oh, just going to say the same thing, man.
Yeah, great group.
I think it's one of the better group of positional, like top to bottom, could be one of the better. I know Penn State's got a hell of a duo, and I'm not saying that we have a duo like that. I'm just saying, like, in terms of the depth, I love this position.
Yep. Got to have an offensive line to block for them, but if our offensive line is a little bit better than last year, or hopefully a lot better, it's going to be a good thing. And once again, when you have playmakers to the outside, it just makes it easier.
Everything will open up.
Yep.
For sure.
Add wide receiver. I have like Nico Raganini. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Ragaini.
And Seth Anderson is kind of what I think. And then and then I have actually Devontae Vines followed by Kaleb Brown. I know a lot of people probably have Kaleb Brown as starting. And once again, like, I wide receiver, just because that's the depth chart doesn't mean that, and then Jacob Bostic. So those 5 guys right there, which once again, if we are healthy, like, that's not a bad 5 guys. I mean, that's actually not bad at all. A lot of those guys are decent. And, if Kaleb Brown and Seth Anderson can kind of live up to the expectations, like, that's a very, very good group.
And Nico coming back, very underrated.
It is.
Very underrated.
It is, because he's
been there. He's been in this offense.
Yep.
He's been productive in this offense. And, just kind of that veteran sort of leadership at that position, I think, is huge, because obviously with new guys coming in and things like that, I think that just helps kind of helps them adjust to, like, what Iowa's offense is about and kind of that position. So
Nico's best year in terms of stat wise was actually 2019 when it wasn't Spencer Petras. So give Nico a decent quarterback, and I think he can have a solid campaign. At tight end, Luke Lachey, Eric All, and Addison Ostrenga. I mean, there's not much more to say, but that is a very, very good trio right there. All 3 guys are going to, I even think Addison's going to play a decent amount this year. I mean, it's a very good trio. And like you said, when you're talking duos of Luke Lachey and Eric All, might be the best duo, not just in the Big Ten, but in all of the country. So looking forward to that. And then at, offensive line, it's going to be mix and match type guys, but I just think from left tackle to right tackle, Mason Richmond, Connor Colby, Logan Jones, Rusty Feth, and Dejon Parker is what I think will be the 5 guys. And then what I love is we have a lot of depth as long as guys stay healthy. Jennings Dunker, who started a decent amount, Bo Stevens, who started a decent amount, Tyler Ellsbury, who started a decent amount, and Nick DeJean, who started a decent amount. I mean, like, all those guys would essentially be backups because those other guys would be starting. So that's huge. I mean, like, all those guys have starting experience. So as long as guys stay healthy and gotten a little bit better, we're going to have a lot of depth at the offensive line, which is big time.
And I think Mason Richmond's actually a stud too.
He is. He's really
he actually played really good for the most part last year in a really bad positional group as a whole. And so having him back is obviously huge. And I think he'll be a lot even better than last year.
And you would imagine that Logan Jones at center will be better too. I mean, once again, he last year, he essentially transitioned from defensive line to center, and we expected him to be, to take kind of
not
the reins
everyone's
from
Tyler Linderbaum,
Yeah.
right? Like you just said, you mentioned that earlier. It's so true. Like it's such a hard thing to be like, oh my God, we don't have a great center. Well, it's like not everyone's Tyler Linderbaum. So I agree. That transition was probably pretty tough, but like you said, another year and an off season, I think is going to be very helpful.
Yep. Defensive line. This is what they said during spring ball, which is, it's no question.
This is going to be hilariously awesome.
Yeah, the most depth that we have. It's 10 guys deep. Some of the guys that could have went on, decide to stay. Starting at left defensive end, Deontay Craig, which he really turned it on towards the end of the season last year. Defensive tackle, Noah Shannon. The other D tackle, Logan Lee. And then defensive end, Joe Evans. And then you got your backups of Aaron Graves, who, from an inside source, someone that I know that knows someone that's in the program, said he was at just an unbelievable, just absolutely tore it up during spring ball. Like the dude is going to be an absolute stud for us. And you saw that last year as a freshman, Aaron Graves. So the fact that he's not even probably going to start, he's kind of like that Lucas Van Ness, but from what I heard is he is an absolute animal. So I'm so looking forward to him. And then Jeremiah Pittman and Yaya Black. So, man, and that's just 6 guys. We're going to play 10 guys deep, according to Phil Parker. So defensive line going to be,
will be fresh,
unreal.
Going to be, and that's the thing, right? We remember when we did was it just freshmen last year when we did our top 10 freshmen, and you were ahead of the curve on that, and you were like Aaron Graves. I'm telling you, he's going to be a stud, and he obviously didn't play a whole lot, but just because we're so deep at the position, but I think this year you're gonna be able to see him be very productive, and like you said, it kind of reminds you of Lucas Van Ness, where it's just a freak athlete, stud. Doesn't start, which is kind of weird, but it's going to be highly productive.
Yep. Yeah, and it's just crazy because, like I said, Joe Evans, Logan Lee, Noah Shannon could have all decided to leave, and they all decided to come back, which is just big time, absolute big time for us. Especially Joe Evans. I'm so glad he decided to come back because he could have easily left.
100%, and he is very productive.
Yep. So I know you really like. Yeah.
I love
like
Joe Evans.
Yeah.
I do. I think he's so underrated. He's a guy that you're just like, wait, he had, 7, 8 sacks in a season. You're like, wait, what?
Well, remember his sack against CJ Stroud that forced that fumble and then he picked it up for a touchdown. That's what he's capable of. So,
yeah.
And then at linebacker, will linebacker, a weak side linebacker, Jay Higgins. No question with that. He started playing last year, and as much as it sucked seeing Justin Jacobs get hurt last year, the one good thing was we were able to see Jay Higgins a lot, and it's going to help for this year because he played a lot last year and he really got better as the year went on. So he's going to be starting. Middle linebacker Nick Jackson, the transfer from Virginia that we were just talking about, and then the Leo position, which I think is going to be it's going to be between Kyler Fisher or Carson Shaw, which don't really know much of Carson, but that same person that knows a person that's well inside the program said he's another player. He gave 2 guys, Aaron Graves, and he said Carson Shaw had an unbelievable spring and that he's a stud. And so It would not surprise me if he is the other linebacker. Now, that group is a little different, kind of that Leo position, because most of the time we are actually playing a cash, and that's probably going to be Sebastian Castro. And he really had a great campaign last year towards the end of the season, including the bowl game. He was all over the field, if you don't recall. That guy was a stud. Yeah. And so he'll be the cash. So he's probably going to be out there more times than not. It's probably going to be like Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson, Sebastian Castro. But when we don't have him out there, it's going to probably be either Kyler Fisher or Carson Shaw. So, a position group where if we didn't get Nick Jackson, I would be a little worried about, because you really only have Jay Higgins, who has starting experience. But with getting Nick Jackson, I'm not really too worried about the linebacker position. I know losing Jack Campbell is big time, and you don't really think about it until you see it out there. It's going to suck not seeing Jack Campbell out there. But with how good our defensive line is, it's going to help their linebackers that much more. And I'm fine with these guys. I think they're all capable of being good. And Nick Jackson obviously has, we already see what he did at Virginia.
Yeah, just obviously some new faces at linebacker. It's just kind of weird. Like you're just so used to, that group and from last year. And but yeah, no, I agree. It's like, well, Jack's moved on. He had to move on at some point. Like it's time to step up. And like you said, and then that again, you get Nick Jackson, like you just mentioned, a guy it's not like he's never played football before. I mean, this guy's a stud. So plug and play starter right away. I think he'll be very, very good and a leader really for the defense.
Yeah. Then in the secondary at corner, Cooper DeJean, Jamari Harris will be the starters. And then this is where why I kind of want another corners, because after that, I mean, I'm not saying these guys are bad, but TJ Hall, who's a younger player, and Deshaun Lee, another younger player, guys that just don't really have much experience. And that's why it's like, I'm sure they're capable of being able to do decent for us, but that's why I just wish we went out and we are going out, but I just hopefully we get one more guy, because it is kind of a drop off after Cooper and Jamari. It's kind of like you go from those two guys and it's kind of like, oh boy, like what happens if one of those guys gets hurt? I'm not going to say it's the end of the world if one of those two guys have to start, but I'd rather go out and get someone like Antonio Carter, who has the experience. And then at safety, obviously Xavier at strong safety, and then free safety Quinn Schulte.
I'm so excited to watch Xavier, dude.
Yeah.
Like this has been talked about now, obviously, for well over a year. Huge recruit. But you saw what he did when he got his limited opportunities in the bowl game, let alone, I mean, in a huge, huge stage, and he takes it a pick six. So, dude, ball hawk, gonna be an absolute stud.
Could be all over the field.
Best, secondary players, again, I think has a huge, potential for being one of the best secondary players to come through Iowa again. I'm so pumped.
Yeah.
So pumped.
And then thing that we don't really talk about much, but special teams. I mean, you can't go wrong with Tory Taylor and Drew Stevens, guys that you don't really talk about, but it is big time. Having a punter like Tory Taylor, and then having a kicker that is reliable, and Drew Stevens, both coming back, special teams should be just as good. And in special teams, you can ask any Iowa State fan this, it wins you a lot of games and it loses you a lot of games. Because, I mean, I'm not giving shit to Iowa State. I mean, you go back to last year, Iowa State lost a lot of games because of their special teams. And 100%. Iowa wins a lot of games because of their special teams. So having a good special teams unit, you don't think about it much. You go into the season, that's one thing that you just don't really talk about until either they're good or bad, and that's when you start realizing, wow, like thank God, or wow, we are losing games because of this reason.
And I hope it's not to the extent that it was last year, but for Iowa, you do talk about the special teams a lot, right? I hope we don't have to as much this year, right? Because I don't want to have to punt the ball 12 times a game, but if that's what it requires to pull out a gutty victory, again, I'm not going to be worried about it. And again, it's just something like you said, where it's like, when you really don't have to think about it much, because you're like, okay, well, we're set at punter, we're set at kicker. It's like, that's just so underrated. And like you said, it really wins you a lot of games, man. When you can flip field position like Tory can, and you're pretty much automatic when you're kicking field goals. It's just that's huge, especially again for Iowa's offense.
Yep. So going back to what I said, like on paper with this team, it has the capabilities, and we'll wrap it up here. Yeah. Capabilities of a really good football team. I mean, there's some position groups where like you kind of have to wait to see it, to see how it does. Like, for example, offensive line, we're just gonna have to wait and see. I mean, some of these guys, just haven't proven it yet. Can they prove it this year? Another position group is, linebackers, right? Like there's new guys there. I know Nick Jackson, but even like him, like he's coming to the Big Ten. I mean, like he's, kind of wait to see it. Just because he was good at Virginia doesn't mean he's going to be great at Iowa. Like you just gotta have to wait to see it. So there's definitely still like little holes.
And you could say that about the entire offense, to be fair.
Yeah.
Right. When you get a lot of these transfers, you just have to wait. We hope that this is all going to be great, right? There might be a slight adjustment. You never know. But that's where, again, like you could literally say that about every position that we've gotten so far.
Yep. But at the end of the day, like there's not many holes on this
No,
or on this
I
roster.
agree.
3 days ago, yeah, the major hole was the wide receiver, but we got that kind of filled in with Kaleb Brown. I would, like I said, I would love to get just one more just to just have another guy. But if we
Yeah,
don't, I'm not nearly as worried as I was just 3 days ago. And
100%.
so, yeah, there's not many holes. So to kind of just wrap it up before we don't talk again until end of July or early August, like there's a reason why you and I are excited. There's a reason why a lot of Iowa fans are excited. Just because you look at this roster, you look at the depth chart, and you say to yourself, like, yeah, this is a good team. This has a capability of having a really good team and having a really good season. And this is a year, in my eye, I think it's Big Ten championship or bust. This is a year to do it. You got to experience starting quarterback. You have a good defense. You have good special teams. You have proven, or not really proven, but you have guys that are capable of being good on the offensive side, something that we need. You're in a division that isn't that great. You're in a division with a lot of new hires. This is the year to do it. You don't play Ohio State. You don't play
There it is.
Michigan.
Schedule.
Like, yes.
Yep, I agree.
In my eyes, it's Big Ten or championship or bust at this point. Now, once again, there's injuries. There's other things that happen. So here on May 6th, it's a lot.
Yeah,
you just never know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But as of right now, we have the capabilities of having a really, really good season and a really fun season. And that's why I'm excited. I can't wait. I can't wait to be back on here, Tyler, in like 3 months or 2.5 months, because at that point we are closing in, and I don't want to wish summer away because I hate that, but just so looking forward to the season.
I'll go back to, and I 100% agree with you. I think once again, in a year where, just some uncertainty in the Big Ten West, I really think Iowa has that leg up on a lot of teams. And I think they, like you said, on paper as it sits right now, should be one of the favorites to come out of the West. I don't see anything wrong with that statement. I think that that's a fair and accurate statement. But like what I was just saying at the beginning, it's just like to go from how we felt at the end of last season, kind of like being like, it's done, I don't have to see it, to I want to see this off. Like I've never been so excited to start a season. I can't really remember this level of excitement and like level of optimism going into a season in a long ass time. So that's awesome. It's awesome to be an Iowa fan right now.
Yeah. Colby said the same thing. He's like, I've never had this level of excitement. And for me, probably the last time was honestly probably 2016, which we didn't really live up to the hype, but that was after we, went 12-0 and we were bringing back CJ Beathard. That was probably the last time where I felt really, really good. Now I'm always optimistic. Like even last year, I was optimistic that Spencer Petras was going to be decent. And I was optimistic that, we would figure it out a little bit, but like, there's a difference of being like optimistic and like being really, really excited. Like for me, like as of right now, as long as we don't have injuries, I'm really pumped for this year and for this team and for some of these players that we got.
We almost made it to a Big Ten championship last year with that offense. I think we have the capability of doing it this year for sure.
Exactly.
I don't think it's an understatement. I really don't.
I will say I don't think our defense will be.
I agree.
As good.
It's hard to replicate how freaking good we were. We were number 2 defense behind Georgia last year. That's just, and we were 8-5 or whatever we were. It's like 8-4, whatever. I don't remember what we were, but 8-5. It's like, what?
Yeah. So, but I do think the defense will be good. I mean, we're bringing back a lot of guys, but I don't think it's gonna. Like, it's hard to be as good. Yeah. I mean, it was like last year's defense was like once in like a generational defense. But I know Phil Parker, and that's one thing I love about Phil is, he knows what to say in like press conferences. And he did say, he said a couple weeks ago, he's like, this defense has makings to be just as good. So, I mean, sounds awesome, but we'll just have to hopefully it does happen. I mean, because you would imagine our offense is going to be better next year. You would imagine with a better quarterback, with some better playmakers, with hopefully a better offensive line, you would imagine that would be better. So if we have just as good of a defense, then yes, we're going to have a great year. So Well, man, how
This
long
is
was
fun.
that?
This is a fun episode. I
It
tell you what,
was. It was.
mostly all positives. You know, obviously revisiting a little bit of the negative from last year, but that just comes with it.
Yep.
Yeah, dude, getting into this, getting to talking with you and football, and just like I said, this level of excitement, man, this fall can't come soon enough. I
I
tell
know.
you what.
Yeah, I'm excited. And once again, when we come back on, well, a lot to talk about too, like into July and August. We'll get into obviously the other programs too in the Big
Yeah.
Ten. For me, I always do like in the summertime, I do a lot of like research with some of the other teams and stuff like that. Cause like for me, like right now, I'll be completely honest with you, I don't really know much about the other teams. I know a little bit here or there. I know about Wisconsin and they're supposed to be decent. I know some of what they're some of the players, but like this summer I'll definitely get more into researching, and then we'll go through all that too this August. So well, man, that is it for this podcast. Thank you guys all for listening. We'll be back in a couple months. Until then, go Hawks and have a safe and happy summer.